look, you may be new here, in which case you really did click on this video expecting me to tell you the most useful languages to learn, but how are we even defining that? Kind of depends where you are, and I don't know where you are. I would have thought that was your job. A Peruvian person who learns English is not helped by that if they then find themselves stuck at 6,000 meters in the Andes. I mean, was that good now? Are you pleased that you learned English and not, how to climb down mountains where you live? For the Peruvians, I mean no disrespect. I don't know anything about Peru other than mountains. Look, what I'm saying is that the concept of the most useful languages to learn in the 2020s or the 2010s or, whatever, whether it's by number of native speakers or number of overall speakers or earning potential, has been covered so many times. Be honest with yourself. Did you really click on this video expecting me to say, did you know that China is going to be the next economic superpower? As a result, Mandarin Chinese is a useful language to learn. I very much doubt that there's someone out there taking notes like, oh, I didn't know that. Mandarin Chinese. All right, and tell me, oh wise language man, is that a difficult one to learn, is it? Nah, it shouldn't be too hard. Learning to use my coffee machine, now that is difficult. So instead, I'm going to give you a list of 5 languages that I think are either cooler or actually more useful than you may have realized. In other words, Lamont's list of cool and underrated languages, better known as LaLaRocure. It's a good brand name, that. Not as many people study them as should when you look at the data or the credentials for that particular language. So let's get started. What? I pushed it too hard. I'm going again. Okay, wait, okay, stop. At number 5, we have Georgian. Now, I put Georgian on this list for a couple of my own reasons, which I don't care to divulge. I hear the name Georgian and I think, okay, that's one of those languages that's spoken by 37 people. We're hardly talking about Hindi here. Despite that, its Wikipedia article starts with some strong words. Georgian is the most widely spoken of, and I swear I thought it was going to say like languages in Europe or something, and I was like, whoa, how did I not realize this? But no, it is the most widely spoken of the Kartvelian languages. Well, I mean, obviously, the Kartvelian languages, how could I forget about them? Its speakers today number approximately 4 million. Now, on the one hand, 4 million, it sounds like very few, but on the other hand, quite a few people that I know are learners of either Finnish or Norwegian, both of which only have around 5 million speakers, but I'm guessing that the average Norwegian or Finnish person has a slightly higher level of English than the average Georgian person. But that is not even close to the best bit, because check out the script. That's literally just the name of the language written in the language. How freaking cool does it look? I said in a video recently that Estonian wasn't very closely related to Russian and was more closely related to heptapod. Give me a few minutes in Photoshop. To be perfectly honest with you, I don't know how good a job it is yet because I haven't actually done it. So what you're seeing on the screen, you know more about than I do right now, if that makes sense. It's this sort of weird Christopher Nolan-y thing. One of those situations. If not heptapod, then at the very least Elvish. And I know that lots of people who learn Georgian do so because of its script. And can you blame them? I have a Russian friend who went to Georgia and she said that it's probably the best value country she's been to in terms of how much things cost versus how nice everything is, which is what value means, but evidently people need it explained to them these days. So all in all, you've got a greater population of speakers of Georgian than you might have expected. You've got a good value proposition for those willing to holiday in Eastern Europe. And I reiterate, the script. Next up, we have Indonesian. Did you know that Indonesia is the 4th most populous country in the world? Because, being perfectly serious, I did not know that. I had no idea that Indonesia has 275 million people. Now, normally I think that speaking population is an overrated factor in choosing a language to learn, but because this particular language, it happens to fit my argument, I'm going to use it anyway. But as language learners, there's something even more interesting about Indonesian, which is that the majority of its speakers, like 2/3 of Indonesian speakers, are not native speakers, which means in theory, if you learn it to a high enough level, you've got the same status as them as a native speaker. So if you get really good at it and then you say something and they say, hey mate, your pronunciation's a bit off there, you can be like, your pronunciation's a bit off. Deal with it. Indonesian, get on it, because next up we have Polish. I've said myself that Polish people seem to be blessed with some kind of amazing language ability. They tend to learn languages very well. Now, I'm not here to go deep into whether that is the case, and if it is, what causes it. It seems to be this sort of perfect storm of linguistics present in their own language, culture, and opportunity, and it definitely is a real thing, so shut up. But you would think that that would make the Polish language less worthy of learning because they speak other languages really well. To generalize, Polish people tend to appreciate language, they appreciate language ability, they're going to appreciate you learning Polish, whether it's a little or a lot. And of course that's going to be the case anyway, but normally the speakers of the languages that appreciate you learning their language the most are the smallest ones, the ones like Icelandic and stuff where hardly any people speak it. But Polish has a comparatively massive 50 million speakers. So in that way, you're kind of getting the best of both worlds. You're getting a big speaking population, but still a language where they're going to love that you've learned it. And speaking of getting the best of both worlds, you're also getting a Slavic language without the hassle of having to learn the Cyrillic alphabet. Now, don't get me wrong, I think that it's generally a dumb argument for learning a language. You know that one that says, well, if you learn this language, then all these languages become easier. You know, if you learn Latin, then Romance languages like French become easier. Yeah, well, you know what makes learning French easier? Learning freaking French.
Mais bien sûr.
So don't hear me saying that you should learn Polish so as to make learning Czech easier. If you want to learn Czech, just learn Czech. I'm just saying if you want the beauty of a Slavic language without this business, then Polish is an option. And if that's not enough to convince you, I asked my Polish friend Klaudia to record a little excerpt on why you should learn Polish. Here it is.
Dlaczego uczyć się polskiego? Myślę, że dlatego, że jest przepiękny i że jest nie lada wyzwaniem lingwistycznym nauczyć się tego języka w sposób zaawansowany i mówić nim dobrze. Ja sama uważam swój język ojczysty za niezwykle wymagający i to sprawia, że nigdy nie przestaję się go uczyć. Mimo tego, że jest moim pierwszym językiem. Dlatego jeżeli ktoś szuka wyzwań, nie ma lepszego języka niż polski. Zachęcam i polecam.
If you want to hear more from Klaudia, I will put her details for her Instagram and various places that she is on the interwebs in the description. I also had a chat with her on my Patreon. That chat was in English and we mainly talked about this theory I have that Polish people are good at languages. Maybe whatever they're putting in the water in Poland that makes them really good at languages is the same thing that makes them enter the most raunchy Eurovision songs every year. We didn't talk about that, but it's totally a real thing. Next up we have... I'm not going to tell you because this one's actually serious. I firmly believe this language that I'm about to say to be the most underrated language to learn in the whole language learning enthusiast kind of space, and it is Turkish. First up, do you know the speaking population of Turkish? No, you don't. Stop pretending that you did. It's about 80 million. Basically the same as Italian. Now, how many people do you know are learning, have learned, or who speak Italian? Tons of them. Like every second person. Oh, I learn a bit of Italian. Italiano. Yeah, like everyone's going on about. How many people do you know who learn or speak Turkish? None. Zero. Elise speaks. She's learning it. That's it. No one else ever. Now that is just one of several reasons, and I do mean like several, that I became so tempted to go all in on Turkish late last year. I was also making some videos around then, some reviews, and I dropped several hints and asked you guys to guess what language you thought it was that I was learning or being tempted by. No one got it. Not one of you. You know why? Because no one considers Turkish as a thing. Full disclosure, I'm not learning Turkish. I haven't really learned any apart from those few days last year. I wish I could. There are so many reasons that I wish I could, but I can't. I've become a very practical man. I spend time looking at the wheelbases of cars to work out how much room they have for my almost teenage son sitting behind me as the driver, which, by the way, pro tip, look at the wheelbase, not the length of the car. But to be honest here for a second, like absolutely seriously, if I could click my fingers and replace my current level of Swedish with the same level of Turkish, I would do it. I would totally do it, because Turkish is like the Volvo V70 of languages. Doesn't cross anyone's minds, but it's a really, really good option. Was it slightly confusing to use a Swedish car in the place of Turkish in the analogy? Yeah, probably. The Volvo, that's Turkish. What would Swedish be? It's an Alfa Romeo. That's Swedish. And that brings us nicely along to number 1, and you know what I'm going to say here. It is Danish. Haha, you thought I was going to say Swedish, didn't you? Yeah, well, I've got a theme going here, and I'm not going to mess it up now. So against all my Swedish-loving, Swedish-speaking, Volvo-driving pride that makes me look at Danish and go, usch, vad äckligt. Danska, det här är den enda gången jag kommer att säga det här. And du är på. But there are some seriously attractive points to learning Danish. For starters, content and lots of it. Real stuff you actually want, not the content that's like, learn Danish in just 10 minutes a day of completely unnatural speech. I mean, books, audiobooks, both native and translated, you will never run out. I mean, there is more in Swedish, but that's kind of like saying, this galaxy is bigger than this galaxy. You're not getting to the end of either galaxy, so who cares? I mean, even just The Killing, or Forbrydelsen, or whatever it's called in Danish, all 3 seasons of that show go for so long that if you were to just sit there watching them back to back, by the end of it, you would be fluent in Danish and like not speak English anymore. And there are tons of other series too, and it's like 95% drama and talking, like lots of dialogue, plus you've got Norwegian stuff, and you don't even need to pick a domain, like a specialty area that you're going to develop your language skills in first. You don't need to do that with Danish, because if you're learning Danish, you've got it already. It's crime. Done. And the other thing is, and I know this firsthand from learning Swedish, it may be a very, very long time, if ever, before you can speak to Danes and have them think you're Danish. But speaking to Norwegians and Swedes, they will think you're Danish. They don't know any better. I know this because I've had this in Swedish. Every time I speak to Swedish people, I can see their eyes kind of flicking, going like, this is weird, like he's speaking Swedish, but I don't think he's a native speaker, but then he's like pretty close, and so maybe his parents are Swedish, and I speak to Danes and Norwegians, and they're just like, oh, you're Swedish then. And I used to correct them and go through the whole convo, yeah, not actually Swedish. But these days I'm too lazy, so they're always just like, oh, you're Swedish. And I'm just like, yeah, sure, I'm Swedish. And they say, where are you from? And I'm like, Sundval. And they're like, oh, I haven't been there. And I'm like, yeah, me neither. So that was my Lamont's list of cool and underrated languages. Let me know what language you're learning, or what language you think is underrated. And yeah, I have an idea of what language is going to be in the comments on this one. Remember to subscribe for more language learning content, and I'll see you soon. Yeah.